Oh, hi there. I didn't see you. So, did I ever tell you the story about how Selena's father threatened to sue me? Oh, I think I spilled some. Yes, that's right. There was a time when Mr. Abraham Quintanilla, Selena's father, creator of Los Dinos, owner of Q Productions and all Selena things, including her music and likeness, and manager of Selena's estate, threatened to sue little old me. But before we get to it, make sure you like and subscribe and do all of those things that YouTubers ask us to do. And also, I don't mean this for me to be very clickbaity, but this isn't a hate video against the Quintanillas. Or Mr. Quintanilla, but it's a way to describe a time in Selena's fandom after she passed away when things were a little weird between the fans and the family. To this day, I hold no grudges, and this isn't a bad, like a terrible story, but the story did happen. So it started the last year of the 90s, a time when music was ruled by boy bands and former Disney stars, and Lycos was a popular search engine, and everybody who was anybody had a GeoCities website with playable midis. And I had become a Selena fan a few years before, and I frequented a site called SelenaEtc.com. It was a chat room. Before you could buy some of Selena's stuff on there, but it was mostly had been turned at that point into a chat room, which was the mecca of Selena fans on the internet, because there just weren't that many sites at the time dedicated to Selena. There weren't many sites, period, to anything. So other than Selena, etc., the only other major Selena site was a site called SelenaForever.com, which had the distinction of being the first Selena website on the internet. It popped up just a few days after she was murdered, and it's still actually up till today. Now, for those of you who were barely alive or not alive at all back then, this was a time before you could easily create a website on Squarespace or WordPress or whatnot, or have a Facebook page, or not even MySpace. MySpace was still years away. And if you wanted to download music, you were likely doing it through Napster or LimeWire or some sort of illegal downloading device. User-generated content just wasn't a thing back then. What was popular during that time was for Selena fans to sign up to email lists, email newsletters that other fans would put together. And in there, they would talk about things like album releases. They would talk about articles that Selena would appear in, magazines that might be coming out. And many of them traded Selena footage. There was no YouTube back then, so fans traded their VHS tapes with each other to be able to see Selena performances and TV specials, particularly for those of us who weren't in places that there was Spanish TV. Spanish-speaking TV. So many of the YouTube videos that you see today are digitized versions of those VHS videos that we would share back in those days. But, I didn't like the idea of being in somebody's mailing list to find out new things that were Selena-related, because many times people use those large mailing lists. They would use it as a way to hoard Selena footage. So they would collect Selena footage from other fans, and then they would just hoard it and then sell it even on places like eBay. The SelenaForever.com site didn't update very frequently, and it wasn't very easy to update things very frequently. And the SelenaEtc.com website at the time morphed into a bulletin board with hundreds of people participating, and there was no moderation whatsoever. So it got messy, and think of 4chan, where people can just say and do whatever they want and nobody notices what they're doing or saying. So arguments got pretty personal and sometimes got really bad. And a few times the Quintanillas would just simply take down the website or the board because of all the fighting that was going on, like World War II kind of fighting. And it got really personal, like really, really personal. So one of those times that the board was down, I decided to actually jump in and create my own website. With the little money that I was making working at Borders Books and Music, I used the little bit of spare time between going to classes at the University of Hawaii to develop SelenaWeb.com, SelenaWeb.com, home of the Selena Online Magazine. And, when I look back, I'm actually pretty proud about what I created back then. The site was quite an accomplishment. It was launched in late 1999. The site had a virtual tour of the Selena sites in Corpus Christi. It listed the magazines that Selena had appeared in recently. And for the magazines that Selena had appeared on the cover, like Entertainment Weekly or People Magazine, all of those things, it had instructions as to how to get them, as well as other memorabilia, because eBay was a thing back then, but they were expensive. And so this way you could just write directly to Time Warner, or I think it was just Time at the time. I don't think it was Warner, that would be able, and so you would just buy it for like $4.99, whatever the cost of the magazine was. You just had to write to them and send them a check and all that stuff. So we would walk people through that. And it had a trade board also, so that people could trade VHS tapes rather than selling them. We were really adamant that you couldn't sell anything on our site. So, but if you could trade, if you had something of value or you had multiple things of stuff, it was the host of its crowning glory, the Selena online magazine. Because my idea at the time, the concept was that most of the site would be kind of static. It wouldn't be updated frequently, but the Selena online magazine would be updated monthly with anything new in the Selena fandom. So by the year 2000, I had a staff of between 8 to 12 Selena fans from all over the world. And it included columns like Selena fan art, the mailman section, which is where fans could email their questions about Selena, and we would research and find answers, and games and puzzles, contests with prizes. And we even had interviews with people who had worked with Selena or her family, such as with, remember we did a piece with David Kramer, who was Selena's bodyguard. You see him in the Selena series at the end. He shows up when Mrs. Quintanilla starts getting worried about how the fans, grabbing Selena. And so we interviewed him. We interviewed the designer of the Selena logo, that nice logo, the creator of the Selena porcelain statues, some Tejano artists that had worked with Selena, and each staff member was responsible for a different column. And I would assign story ideas to those reporters. And one of my favorite features was a section called Selena and Me. Each issue, a new fan would be invited to write for that column and share how they became a Selena fan and what Selena meant to them. And it taught me that people had very personal reasons as to why they became Selena hardcore fans. One particular person I remember talked about how she had to go through chemotherapy for cancer treatment, and she would listen to Selena's music during that time, and she credits Selena's music as being able to get her through the chemotherapy. And I thought it was just an amazing story. So we put a lot of work into the site, and it paid off. We were the #1 Selena-related website, and when you search for Selena on the interwebs, as we old people call it, our site was listed higher than even the official SelenaEtc.com site. It was hard to track visitors back then, but there were these simple counters where you could see, how many people had seen your site, or just how many times your site had been, uploaded. And we received hundreds each day, hundreds of views each day, and that was kind of a big thing back then. Meant that a lot of people were going to see it, and at the time, I felt like I was a model Selena fan who was working with other Selena fans to keep her legacy alive. And so I could hold my head up high that I was doing my very best to keep Selena's legacy alive. And then one day, as I was walking through the university between classes, the phone rings. Oh. Bueno. Wait, sorry, I have a phone call on my cell phone. We had cell phones back then, okay? And my cell phone rang. It went like this. Hello?
This is over right now.
Mr. Quintanilla? How did you get my cell phone number? Are you talking about my website, selenaweb.com?
You don't think I know who you are? I come from the streets. I know what a bum musician is.
I'm not a musician. I actually work at Borders, and I go
You're gonna ruin your career. You're gonna ruin your life. You're only 20 years old. Give yourself some time.
How did you know that I was 20 years old? Anyway, I'm not going to take down my website. It's a labor of love.
What did you say?
I said I love the website. And the website loves me.
If you think I'm gonna allow you to come in here and mess up my family, ruin everything that would work for, you're wrong.
I respect your family, and I don't want to ruin anything. I'm just a Selena fan with a dream that would come to touch us all.
That's it! You're fired! Do you hear me? You can ride back to Corpus Christi, but after that, you're fired!
But I don't work for you or live in Corpus Christi. Okay, so maybe it didn't go quite like that, but it certainly felt like it. I did, in fact, receive a phone call on my cell phone from Mr. Quintanilla. He identified himself as Selena's papa, and then he ripped into me. He said that he was going to sue me because I was infringing on his rights. And I was scared. But I mentioned I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just trying to keep her memory alive. And he very angrily explained that the photos of Selena that I used on my site were without his permission, and I was not allowed to make any money off of them. He also said that I couldn't use the name Selena on my domain name, which I was using without his approval, obviously. And I quickly said, I'm not making any money off of Selena. I would never do that. But he had done his homework, and he actually remembered more than I did about my site at that moment. Because you see, on the top of the page, there was a banner with a notice that said, each time that you click on the banner below, it will provide us with the needed revenue to pay for the domain hosting. Please do your part and help support selenaweb.com and click on the advertisement below. Thank you, exclamation point, because I put exclamation points after my thank yous. Each click would get us like 3 cents. And I think probably about 50 people clicked on it. And I think I clicked on it like 40 times out of those 50. And they wouldn't even send you a check until you reach like $10 worth of clicks, which would have been like years for me to get to that point. So I tried to explain that to him, and that if anybody came in, that it would help pay for the hosting, that I wasn't making any money. It was just to help pay for that, and that no money had actually come in. And I explained to him that I was paying about $40 a month out of pocket. Domain hosting was pretty expensive, and with the type of traffic that we were getting, we had to get pretty good web hosting. But that only seemed to make him more angry. And then it clicked for me. I understood what he was so mad about. And I agreed to shut down my website and transfer the domain name to him. Before he hung up, though, I wanted to explain my situation, who I was, why I was doing what I did, and why I was willing to give him the domain. And when I explained that to him, his voice changed and his whole demeanor changed. He said that his lawyers had wanted to start a lawsuit with me, but that he remembered that I had visited visited Corpus Christi in the museum earlier that year, and that instead he wanted to talk to me directly. At that point, I was quiet. I was sad, really. Not angry, I was sad because all of the work that I and the other Selena fans had done would go away. I mean, I taught myself HTML to be able to put this site together. And, he tried to kind of cheer me up by telling me the new Selena projects that he was working on. And I understood and, remember he was talking and what he was talking about, but I couldn't really pay attention because my heart was just thumping and my head was just kind of throbbing, thinking about like, oh man, like, I have Selena's father calling me, threatening to sue me. After being a fan all these years, I felt pretty devastated. He apologized for having yelled at me, and he said that he has to deal with people that are trying to make money off of his daughter all the time, but that he didn't mean to take it out on me. And I thanked him for saying that, and I told him that AB's Cumbia Kings album had been #1 at Tower Records locally, and he said that they had talked about possibly touring Hawaii, and that if I saw any articles written locally, if I could save it for them and send it. And I said I would, and he said that somebody else would contact me about the transfer of the domain, and he apologized again, and we said bye. I remember these things because I wrote it down afterwards. So I went back through my notes to see what I had written down, and that's almost verbatim what I wrote down. I didn't write down specific things because, again, I was just so shocked at it all that I can only remember broad things, even just a few minutes after it happened. And then a few hours later, his brother Eddie called me and talked to me, and Eddie was much nicer than Mr. Quintanilla, and he also apologized for his brother Abraham, and he said he had a proposal for me. What if they put me to be in charge of the official Selena newsletter, and I would create an online version of their newsletter? Originally, I said yes, but later I turned it down. You see, I wasn't doing the website for the Quintanillas, and I wasn't even doing it for Selena. Selena's gone, right? It was for Selena fans. There was so little for Selena fans back then, and this Selena etc. chat board just wasn't cutting it. We had to make our own content. The record label kept putting out the same album over and over with just new packaging. It's all the same songs. It felt like there was nobody looking out after Selena's fans. And it was obvious that the Quintanillas and pre-productions were overwhelmed by the attention that Selena continued to receive and really couldn't keep up with the demand. And with no social media back then, Chris and Suzette and AB were not really, communicating with the fans in a mass way yet. So I thought I would take up that mantle. I would figure out a way to sort of organize us. And it was important for me that that everybody understood that this was made by Selena fans for Selena fans. Back then, I would have never imagined that Selena would be even more beloved now. And I'm glad that, sites like mine don't have to exist anymore because she's present in so many projects. She's in regular, media. You can search the internet and find out what's coming up very easily. That exchange with Mr. Quintanilla made me see something really clearly. The movie never explored what happened to him or any of the family members after Selena's murder, right? What would happen to a man that had made his entire life guarding his daughter's career after she was no longer here? Yes, many people are going to say he's just money hungry. All he was interested in was saving his meal ticket. But honestly, I don't think it was that. In those seconds, when I heard him yelling at me, I thought I heard somebody that was deeply hurt. And maybe I was just hearing what I wanted to hear. What I told him that day on that phone call was that the last thing I wanted to do was cause him any more trouble. I remember saying that to him. I remember saying, listen, you're Selena's father. No matter how much we love Selena, none of us will know the pain that you have felt from this loss. And if my website is causing you to be upset, then you can have it because you've already lost enough. The last thing that I want is to disrespect Selena's father. Not because of who he was, but because of how much I love Selena. And I honestly believe that. The loss of a parent losing a child cannot be compared, nor should it be compared to any other kind of loss. It's unique, and I hope I never have to feel that pain, and I hope you never have to feel that pain. And that's all there is. So to kind of end this whole story, in 2005, I traveled to Houston to the Selena Viva tribute concert with over 60,000 other fans. And it was a spectacular event. I loved it so much. It had the who's who of, the Latin music community playing tributes to Selena. And a lot had changed, since I had the website. I did reopen up a new website under the title Tejano Rose. So as long as it didn't use her name, I thought I would be in the clear. I didn't put any more banners saying click here so I can get 3 cents. But I had stopped producing it by that time, by 2005, because I didn't need to have a website. There was enough Selena content on the internet to keep us entertained. And the Selena Viva concert definitely was the largest up to that point. After the live telecast, I went to pick up Whataburgers for our Selena group that I was with. For those of you who don't know what Whataburger is, it's a Texas fast food burger joint, kind of like McDonald's, but in a Texified way. And Selena loved it. So we all decided that we wanted to have that night was Whataburger. And as I walked into Whataburger, on the corner was Abraham Quintanilla, Marcela Quintanilla, Suzette, and a few other family members. And they were just sitting there on the corner of Whataburger, eating Whataburger. I wonder if they had the same idea or if they just really wanted Whataburger. They were still dressed in their fancy clothes that they wore to the concert. And as I was paying with my credit card, the girl behind the counter asked me for my ID. And she said something like, wow, you're here from Hawaii? What are you doing all the way over here? At that point, Mr. Quintanilla had gotten up to get ketchup or ask for napkins or something, but he was standing just a few feet away at the counter. And so I made sure that he could hear my answer. I said, I'm here for the Selena concert. And the cashier said to me, You came all the way over here from Hawaii for that? And I kind of side looked at Mr. Quintanilla and I said, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I don't know if he put two and two together that I was the guy that he had tried to sue, or if he might have remembered, or if just, he kind of just heard that exchange. But he turned to me in like a very, you know, stern face with his glasses, his rain glasses, and just mouthed, "Thank you." And I just smiled, grabbed my food, and went. So that's it. That's my Mr. Quintanilla story. It's a little bit interesting because I don't think a lot of Selena fans necessarily get an angry call from Mr. Quintanilla in the middle of the day. I don't pretend to know or understand that family. That's their prerogative. I've actually defended the Quintanillas a lot on social media, much to the chagrin of other fans. And I know that the comments are going to be mixed. All I say is always remember that even Chris talked about that Selena really disliked her father being disrespected, regardless as to how he was behaving. She fought with him a lot, and she certainly took Chris's side many times. But I think just like all of us who love our family members, we don't like it when other people think or do bad things towards our family. And I think that's where Selena was. And so for me, in general, I don't want to put out things that I don't know about into the world about the Quintanillas, speculation or rumor or anything like that. But this story is my actual story. It's what happened. It's my life that Mr. Quintanilla happened to come into. So I feel that that's fair game. And again, because even though I had this negative exchange, I don't consider it a negative thing in the end. But, to each their own. Take care, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget, I'll be putting out more content like this. I have tons of stuff. And so I'm hoping to be able to put it out little by little. I got a new camera. I got a new sound. So usually it takes me so long to edit. So we'll see when this comes out. But thank you so much. Aloha.